Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Electric Drum right here on 94.3 WYBC, the rhythm of the city. I am your host, Wanda Coppage, as I try to get my mic correct you can hear me loud and clear. I have a very special guest with us today. You're going to want to hear from her because she has a very prominent position over at New Haven Promise. She is the assistant to the president at New Haven Promise and the program manager for K through 12. You've probably seen her in some of these orientations going over everything you need to know about New Haven Promise. Her name is Jorgieliz Casanova. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, back with us because a couple of years ago I got a chance to sit down and speak to you. Well, now we have a little bit more time so I can get to know you a little bit better. As I mentioned, Georgia Elise is usually the person that is speaking to you in English and in Spanish when doing the orientations and letting, especially the incoming freshmen, know what needs to be done to qualify. Make sure you have your ducks in a row for New Haven Promise. But what we don't know is about you. Georgia Elise, where are you from?
So, I am actually originally from Puerto Rico, but I came here to New Haven, Connecticut when I was 5 years old. Um,
Wow.
I don't remember much from my upbringing in Puerto Rico, and this is essentially New Haven is home for me. It's where I've been my whole life.
Nice. What part of New Haven?
So I have been in a Hill neighborhood for most of that my life, but currently I am a resident of the Fairhaven neighborhood, and
Nice.
I'm really familiar with the area and all of the different developments that are going on. So that's pretty exciting.
So when you obviously being born in Puerto Rico, but you came here at a young age, is it that you did you grow up in a Spanish speaking home?
So we spoke Spanish, but like many other students, sometimes the Spanish that we inherit from our parents may be a bit of a broken Spanish. It's kind of like slang Spanish, and
Yeah.
so I did take it upon myself to take Spanish as a minor in college at Albertus Magnus to fine tune and polish and get my accents right. Um, and most importantly, to be able to properly translate the material that we have here at New Haven Promise for Spanish speakers, as we did have a growing population when I first joined the team. And we wanted to make sure we were adjusting our marketing materials for them.
Nice. But so you didn't this was not something you did in high school? No Spanish classes in high school?
No Spanish classes in high school. I actually took French in high school. It went very well. And then I finally came around and realized professionally I wanted to focus on my Spanish a bit more.
Yeah, you sound so very fluent. Like this is your first language when you speak. I was thoroughly impressed when I watched you do orientations.
Thank you so much. I love it. I love the ability to be able to transition from the two languages and to be able to provide accurate information to families in English and Spanish. We know that sometimes that happens in a district where a lot of our students are very fluent bilingual, and then the parents may not be fluent in English. And so we try to make sure that everyone is on the same page, since going to college is a collaborative effort between the
Right.
family, school, and you want to keep parents involved and informed.
Well, that's what I was actually going to ask you. You came from Puerto Rico to Connecticut, New Haven at 5. Your parents, did they speak English or were they completely Spanish?
So they spoke mainly Spanish. So I very quickly became the family secretary.
Oh, wow, at 5. Come on
And
now.
I was the only English speaker in my family for quite a long time before my siblings caught up to speak English and be able to properly translate. So I was essentially providing those supports to my families as we were growing up, and I since I learned so quickly.
How many siblings do you have?
We are a family of six siblings.
Okay.
And I actually went to New Haven Public Schools as well. So I've lived in the city, and I'm also a recipient of New Haven Promise. So I've seen the program from the recipient side, but also the staff member side, and trying to figure out how to develop and support the students beyond just a scholarship and giving them dollars to go to college. What else can we do to ensure their success and that they're coming back?
I love that. And I love that you experienced that as a child yourself, being able to have the whole family involved in your role with that. Which schools did you attend here in New Haven?
So I went to Truman School from kindergarten all the way through eighth grade. I had a transformative experience there. I would say, actually, I would credit Truman School for sure
Right.
for giving me the love of education. I struggled if in fifth grade, when my household became a single parent household, suddenly my father passed away. He went to the hospital. He was ill,
Mm.
and he did not come back home a week later. So um,
Condolences.
that was an incredible change. And I had a very rough year, but I had an amazing assistant principal who really was able to connect and relate to me, Mr. Trotman. And he was able to really get me to see education as a way out and how to use education as a leverage to create certain spaces that I wanted to be into, or to be able to have access to certain programs that I really wanted to do, but they didn't have the support of my family to access these programs. So it was a lot of independent navigation with the support of a lot of professionals and mentors.
I know it's been a while, but condolences to you on the passing of your father. How old were you?
I was in fifth grade, so I was just not even 12 years old. I was 11 years old. And for someone who was, I definitely was a daddy's girl. I was named after my father
Right.
entirely. And they actually thought I was a boy, and they thought I was going to be their last child. So
Wrong on that level, right? So you have one younger sibling. Everybody else is older.
the boy finally came after me. So it took about 2 years, 3 years. So there's not a lot of age gaps in between the siblings that neighbor each other in my family. But the oldest is over 30 years old, and the youngest is just starting to hit 25, 26.
Nice. I think that's good spacing. When it comes to, you said your Mr. Troutman at Truman prepared you for education and showed you the importance of it. Did you have any grief counselors at all that kind of helped you through the passing of your father?
I did not. And actually, this is something that I talk to students a lot, particularly before they leave high school, how to address those trauma or those events that we experience in life but don't address because it seems so normal for
Yeah.
us.
Hmm.
And I think I've started to tell students, like, hey, listen, access therapy as soon as possible. Like,
Yeah.
get these traumatic things that you're going through, that you're bottling up inside, addressed, so that when you get older in life, you don't feel like you're crumbling into pieces from things that have been weighing on you for decades and years. So
Absolutely.
yes.
Jorgieliz, I don't think people realize how closely connected you are to the position that you have. You're talking to people about grief counseling because you did not receive it. Education is extremely important to you. It was pushed upon you, and like I said, you balance both. I speak to Hispanic individuals, students, and English speaking students. I think you should be commended, and I'm glad I got a chance to highlight and spotlight you. When did you first learn about New Haven Promise?
So thanks to Mr. Trotman, I knew that I was going to go to college. I automatically had a commitment and dedication to being able to make it beyond high school.
Okay.
And so I was looking for resources. I knew my family couldn't pay for it. I knew that from the moment. And so instantly, when you think about going to school beyond high school, you're thinking, well, what's the price tag? We
How
don't
much
see
is it gonna
price
cost?
tags.
Right.
So what does it cost to go to school had I not been in a free public school system? And I started researching those sort of things and looking at the colleges. I was looking at partner schools of New Haven Promise, and I saw University of New Haven. I saw all of these local colleges and universities that essentially students tend to overlook because they're in our backyards.
Mhm.
And I was trying to get into them and figure out what is it like to be a student there. So I started taking pre-college courses in high school,
Nice.
and I spent the second half of almost all of my senior year really on the University of New Haven's campus taking college classes, trying to get ahead on my college studies so that I don't pay too much being in college. And
Which
I
high school?
I went to Metropolitan Business Academy.
Okay.
I initially started at Connecticut Scholars Academy, which was a very small school connected to Wilbur Cross. And that school went away after my freshman year. Um,
Okay.
and so I joined Metropolitan Business Academy, and I fit right in. It was meant to be, and I appreciate the opportunity to be welcomed by the students, because it's uncommon for a school to break down and have to disperse those students. So
Yeah.
I would say I was lucky to be able to go there and have that experience. It was small, it was personal. I was able to get through my counselors, which is not the easiest thing sometimes.
Yes.
And the student to teacher caseload there was so easy. to manage that I was able to navigate and learn what I needed to learn to be successful beyond high school.
I was actually going to ask you about your relationship with your guidance counselors. Did they assist that in for your transition to school, helping you get financial aid and whatnot?
Yeah, so I was actually a College Summit peer leader, which was an organization that was in our district, preparing students for college by taking them for a summertime, a week or two on the college campuses. And so I had the opportunity to go to UConn stores and be part of the program. And I've received all of the help that I would have received during senior year to apply to college. So my essay got done over the summer.
Okay.
My college list was done over the summer. My SAT scores, I knew how that was. That was clear, as crystal clear for me, because I went through this leadership program. But the purpose of the leadership program, I did not join for the benefits of myself. I actually joined because I wanted to replicate it on my with my peers.
Nice.
And so once I learned everything that they were doing and I observed enough to be able to replicate it, then the peer leaders' duties were to help their peers senior year make it across and through their college application process. And I was passionate. It was so easy for me.
I
College
love that.
ability was so easy that and I felt so much joy and so rewarded by seeing my peers commit to their colleges and I help them analyze their financials because sometimes they're not doing that until July, which is
Yeah,
when bills come. And July, senior year, after you've crossed that stage, is way too late to be looking at bills and trying to figure out money, especially if you're from a low income or first generation family or just a family who could be high income but is supporting multiple students. It does not mean that they can easily afford to make a quick turnaround to cover a $5,000 or $2,000 gap. That very small percentages and quantities of dollars can it mean a lot for students who are college bound after graduation
absolutely.
if they're not looking at those bills in advance. And so
Absolutely. First, let me go back to asking you when you started the college application or the college seeking process, and you did see the numbers. Did the cost deter you in any type of way, or were you just a little bit more driven to make sure that you had it?
cost didn't deter me because I learned that if you apply to these colleges and then submit your financial aid application, then you'll get a package. If you don't apply and simply submit a FAFSA financial aid application, you're never going to see what those figures look like. So you actually have to apply to be able to compare and contrast packages.
Okay.
Um, and so that was my strategy. My strategy was comparing and contrasting packages and then being able to understand that I am a product. I am marketable. I am something that colleges want. The more that I challenged myself and became engaged in college and career classes, in community service, Metro had a 100 hours community service requirement, 25 per year you were there.
Hmm.
I only had to do 75. But I still exceeded 100 hours of community service. I still went above and beyond and applied myself because I wanted to get the learning experience from those opportunities to then apply to how I'm going to be successful in college. The only way I could do that is if I immerse myself in these experiences.
I love it.
And so that was a strategy of mine, and I was able to say, "Hey, I am an honor student. I have taken college classes. I know what I will do on your campus." I was able to do a criminal justice summer program on Albertus's campus prior to senior year, right
Mhm.
after I did that leadership program. And I ended up loving their campus, like
Nice.
really falling in love. And I only had been on University of New Haven's campus. And so going to those colleges is so important. Those tours are
Yes.
so essential because you can see yourself there. And I always tell students, don't go when it is a busy time for touring.
Like
Go
homecoming.
yeah, go
Exactly.
when it is not. Go when it is a regular time because half the time when you're a college student, you're gonna have regular days
Hmm.
for those fun days, and you wanna see how will I feel on those regular days? What
Yeah.
does reality look like when it's not, rainbows and sprinkles, essentially?
All the time, exactly, because you do have more regular days, then it's not always fun, fun, party, party. What
Mhm.
was the college selection process like for you? I know you said you were looking at a couple of them. How did you settle on Albertus?
They I say self-eliminated. I
Okay.
didn't eliminate any institutions. What I did was I started from the institution that gave me the most lucrative package
Mhm.
and use that as a baseline to determine how much more money I can get out of them.
Oh
I
my goodness. Look at you, Jorgieliz. That's that business degree right there. But you didn't even major in business, but you got it in you.
but I learned that I am a product for
Valuable.
a business. I am
Mhm.
valuable, and college is a type of business.
Yeah.
And sometimes people overlook that, and it's no, college is a type of business. There's monies and dollars tied to it.
Absolutely.
And so I try to go ahead and go back and forth between colleges and universities until they stop increasing. And that what I said is you stop seeing my value. If
Mhm.
you stop seeing my value and your financial aid stop, and I still had over a $10,000 gap, I was not going to your institution because I had to be realistic about my family's financial status.
Yes.
And I had to be realistic about how many scholarships I applied to. Yes, I applied to 15 scholarships, but some of them may not get to me until after commitment day. And what do I want to do? I want to make this financial package as reasonable as possible. Even if these scholarships don't all come through. So I would say, here's a scholarship I know I'm getting for certain. Here's a scholarship I'm getting for certain because it's based just on these requirements and I meet them.
Yeah.
So knowing who you are as a student is very important. Knowing your GPA, your attendance, and sometimes it really goes deeper than we even think.
Yeah.
And I love that I've been here at New Haven Promise to see how the requirements really ensured my success in college. Because if I'm not in college, I'm not learning. If I'm not learning, I'm not meeting the basic requirements of colleges. There's rules and guidelines in college that you have to meet, that the leniency may not be there. And so you want to start shifting students' ideas from having incredible flexibility to
Mhm.
teaching them how to adhere to boundaries, to timelines, to deadlines, instead of figuring out how they can not adhere to it, but they can prevent
Right.
getting into so many situations that may be difficult to get out of if you can at least have some preliminary guidelines for the students to
I love
follow.
that.
Mhm.
If you're just tuning in, this is Jorgieliz Casanova. She's a program manager and the assistant to the president at New Haven Promise. She's actually a recipient of New Haven Promise scholarships. And what was that like for you when you found out you were getting some monies from New Haven Promise? And then part B of that is when you were accepted to Albertus, did you already have your heart set on working for New Haven Promise?
No. So I really honestly thought I was going to end at another different institution.
Okay.
It was not until spring semester where I buckled down and started to narrow down I got down to 4 colleges. So I went from 20 colleges to narrow it down to 4 colleges, and then saying, okay, these 4 colleges continue to increase their aid. So let me see how far more I can push it. Um,
Right.
and I sent them my resume. I had a very nice resume for a high school senior. It was a competitive resume. You would think I'm applying for a job, but I wasn't. It was my basic college resume, and the adult professionals will be so impressed with it. And I'll just look at them like, this is just a regular resume for me. So,
Because you don't see many seniors come in with these type of documents, that type of readiness, preparedness. So yeah.
Mhm. And that was really it. Just the amount of preparation that I put into it. You can tell through the whole process that I was taking this incredibly serious.
Mhm.
And I understood that, once you're doing these applications, your social security number is on there. And that I had already taken financial literacy and and I was like, my credit score and making sure that it's in shape and that I'm not putting myself into more than I can actually handle.
Nice.
So that was great. I went and I narrowed it down to these 4 institutions. One of them was out of state. Eventually, the fourth one removed themselves. And so I was left with 2 in-state and one out of state institution. The
Mhm.
2 in-state continued to battle by increasing their aid, and my gap was only 5,000 for freshman year so far without my scholarships.
Mhm.
So I contacted New Haven Promise because I knew I already met the requirements for the scholarship. I knew my GPA, I was tracking my attendance, and I knew my community service was done. It was going to meet their requirements. So I went and I asked if I can get an estimate from New Haven Promise, and I ended up being able to get an estimated figure. And that's what we do actually for the seniors. We provide estimated figures prior to commitment day in case they need to make a decision inclusive of New Haven Promise.
Yeah.
And we tell them, but you still have to make sure you're keeping track of your other requirements. The attendance is so, so important all the way up till the end. Um, and so I went ahead and I got an estimate from New Haven Promise. I knew Albertus and the other institution were both eligible, and the award actually ended up being the same for both institutions
Nice.
from Promise. So I just went back and I said, here's how much I saved up from my summer jobs these past 4 summers in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's what I was doing. I was saving up as much as my income while I was working in high school to go towards college.
Yeah.
And that's given the gap of that family support. There's no EFC, there's no expected family contribution for me. And there were no savings. And so I went to Albertus and they came back and they said, you know, we value you, we see you. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that personal touch. They're just I knew I was moving into the right place. And I said all the time, I say, I'm like a plant. And I have simply been moved from one pot into another. And Albertus was the right pot for me to grow in and to
Mm-hmm.
be able to blossom in. And I stood with that. And I used it in my Young Women's Leadership Launch speech senior year. And I told students, you know, you remember that you are a continuous blossoming flower and
Yes.
you outgrow gardens here and there. And that is perfectly fine because you need it for your growth. You
Mm-hmm.
need it to get where you want to be.
And when you outgrow the pot, you have to go somewhere else so you can continue to flourish.
Exactly. And it's totally fine. And it doesn't mean we forget where we come from or what we
Right.
did beforehand. It just means we're going further where we wanted to do. It's happening. What we've been waiting for is happening.
Nice. And you've been flourishing over at New Haven Promise for how long now? When did you first join them?
So I joined New Haven Promise actually after midterms of my first semester at Albertus. I was working full time at Stop and Shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still volunteering, having a wonderful time giving back to the community. I was happy I stood so close by.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran across Patricia Melton, president of New Haven Promise.
Yes, Miss Melton.
Yeah, while volunteering. And she just kind of kept a mental note. And they saw my transcripts, and I got invited into the honors program. That wasn't initially something I applied to, which now I tell students all the time, apply to that honors program.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you feel that the honors program will provide more resources? It has more information to provide for our students?
Yes, it does. So honors program have both financial incentives, but also academic supports on a more specialized level.
Okay.
Um, because you're working on meeting this honors requirement, essentially you have an honors advisor that you're assigned to in addition to your advisor. And I always said the more support you can get
Yep.
navigating college, the more likely you are to navigate it in a way that's suitable and most best beneficial for your future.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wish I had that because they have an onboarding kind of college bridge process that they do with honor students that I think more students can have and should have access to and be able to receive that additional support, because summer melt is very real.
Yeah.
And during the summer, once they hit those college campuses, it is already a major transition for them. And so if they haven't spent the summer preparing for this transition, it can be really, really rough for some of those students. And it can be a really impactful thing for them long term wise as well if they don't hit the ground running.
That's actually what I wanted to speak to you about because like you've been doing this for a very long time that you just pointed out to us, and even beyond that because you were already connected to it. You were one, well, not one of a kind, but you were special. You were on the ball. Let's talk about those who will be entering their senior year in August.
Yes.
Where should they be? What should they already have done? And if they just so happen to have dropped the ball somewhere, what can they do to pick it back up and be where they're supposed to be?
Oh, absolutely. I'm super, super excited to share this because I'm always thinking of ways students can get ahead before they even enter ninth grade. Um,
Yes.
we have what's called FAFSA CT, FAFSACT.org, and there's checklists for each school year, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, what it is that you should be doing to be on track.
Mm-hmm.
Seniors should have and should be visiting some of those colleges and universities that they want to go to. If you cannot afford to go in person, try a virtual tour. If
Yeah.
you are going to be going to an out of state institution or an institution that will require you to travel, establish a travel fund, because the reality is that you can't live on those campuses for the entire time. And sometimes we don't calculate how many times we need to go back and forth. A flight for August right now to Atlanta is like $220 one way. So imagine you being a college student who has to do this 4 times a year. You
That's
want to,
great advice.
yes.
We do not remember that.
Yeah, and so if you're going to commute or you're going to an out-of-state institution, you need to start a travel fund.
Mm-hmm.
Seniors can do their FSA IDs right now, and I recommend it. Their FSA ID is an application that all students who have ITINs and social security numbers have to complete this application for federal student aid. This
Okay.
is also how schools determine need-based aid. So if you're only receiving merit aid based off your academics and you're a student of need, they're waiting for that FAFSA to give you that need-based aid. So you can create your account, which is your FSA ID, now. The
Okay.
student and parent will both need separate FSA IDs. Please, students, do not do it for your parents. Parents, do not do it for your student. It is going
Okay.
to create many, many issues later.
Okay.
And if you're a parent of multiple children, you want access to that FSA ID, because that same FSA ID is tied to your social security number. You're going to need it, even if your next kid isn't going to senior year until 10 years from now.
And
Um,
so this is not just for seniors. You're talking about high school students in general. Start doing this now.
FSA IDs seniors should create FSA
Seniors.
IDs now.
Okay.
Absolutely. They should have their college lists ready.
Mm-hmm.
I always recommend a minimum of 5 colleges, even if your school, if your student doesn't know what they're doing, pick some rolling admissions colleges, pick some institutions that can let them go in as exploratory, undeclared for quite some time. Pick a community college, but pick at least one institution where your kid is going to after high school, even if they're saying they're joining the workforce.
Okay.
You need a plan B, you need a plan C. Sometimes the changes happen after graduation, and in July, staff is not available to address those changes so quickly. So establishing the plan in advance would help you, just in case if it needs to change later when you graduate.
Yeah.
The other thing is those college essays should be drafted. The prompts are exactly the same, so those students can look up the prompts for the Common App in advance and do their essays in advance. I really, really recommend it. And then the goal for every student should be to have your college applications out by January. Um,
Okay.
that's really the goal.
So they're going into senior year. The graduating seniors, they're already done. They're on their way to school.
Mhm.
Incoming seniors now, they should be on the ball, is what you're saying. Time
Yeah,
is money.
and it's gonna be there's gonna be so much going on. You don't want to leave it for the last minute. And sometimes fall is the best time to be crazy in applications, because then you can relax in the spring and focus on the financials part,
Mm-hmm.
and then just go right into making that decision and wait for those packages to see what's going to be the best option for you. And at least you're not worrying and stressing during prom season and graduation.
Right.
And a lot of things happen when the weather gets much, much nicer, and the last thing you want to worry about is that college application that you didn't do, especially if the deadline is, for a lot of our colleges, priority deadline February is definitely it. But if you're thinking of UConn stores, that application needs to go out before December 15th.
Okay.
So yeah, and those campuses get very, very full very quickly. So that is one of the institutions that is very much first come, first serve.
Yeah.
on top of
And senior year, like you mentioned, senior year expenses can be outrageous as well. So you definitely want to get ahead of the game so you can enjoy your last year of high school and not stress about that. Now, what about freshmen? We're coming from eighth grade, going to our freshman year. And have you started your orientation sessions as of yet?
I haven't started my orientation sessions yet, and I always tell all of the schools, please invite me to be there. We will make sure someone's represented there. We have every year as part of the back to school rally, we do put New Haven Promise flyers in the backpacks as
Hmm.
well. And we distribute New Haven Promise flyers district wide to families, but it's really accessible. One of the biggest things is hitting the ground running. Sometimes the students may get a little discouraged because they're not doing as great in marking period one.
Yeah.
That GPA for freshman year, the goal is 2.5 and above, because 2.5 and below, you're spending a lot of your sophomore, junior, and senior year getting nearly A plus grades to get it to a cumulative GPA of 3.0. You can be doing so much more if you can track your academics and make sure you're keeping at those B's, maybe a few C's freshman year, because it is a transition, but you
Yes.
want to make sure you're getting that B average is your goal so that you can then not spend the next 3 years correcting or trying to figure out how to get yourself into AP and honors courses at the end of your studies to get to a 3.0 GPA.
And the
Um,
3.0 GPA is what the qualification for New Haven Promise. You have to
it is.
get the 3.0. Okay.
And that's the minimum for New Haven Promise. We have Passport to Promise, but it is a bit of a more competitive pool because there's a limited number of those Passport to Promise scholarships.
Okay.
And we try to tell students you can certainly aim for a Passport to Promise scholarship, but it is competitive. Or you can hit the ground running and make sure you're aiming for that 3.0 where you're it's not competitive. And then the community service hours can be done at any moment, from the moment they graduate eighth grade all the way through the deadline of their senior year. Essentially, our deadline has been in May of senior year. But
Okay.
if they can get it out the way very, very quickly early on in their careers, it won't conflict with work
Mhm.
because sometimes we may not want to do service for free. We can work for it.
Absolutely.
Um,
New Haven Promise, you guys are really good about sending out those emails and letting you know about the qualifying community hours that people can take advantage of right now.
yep, that's me. So I compiled a list of nonprofits within the city that would qualify. And then we also have established a community service email. It's service@newhavenpromise.org,
Mhm.
solely for community service questions, for students to send their documents for community service hours, and to support students in logging their hours electronically so that we're not losing paper along the way, and so that the students can continuously track their hours. So they will have access to their hours in real time, and they can always contact us and say, okay, my high school has a graduation requirement. Some of the hours may not qualify. Can you just tell me how many of my hours total qualify for New Haven Promise? But
Right.
if the high school doesn't have a graduation requirement, then all of your hours should be at a nonprofit within the city of New Haven for them to qualify for New Haven Promise. And we support students by offering, as you mentioned, qualifying opportunities. We just had a volunteer backpack assembling opportunity with M&T Bank at Career High School last week, and it was assembling the backpacks, but also college and career chats. So those students got to connect with professionals and really connect those conversations to where they see themselves within the next few years career wise. And they got feedback and advice and how to launch into it. And that's immensely beneficial for them as they're thinking
Right.
long-term goals.
Right there on the spot. And I advise people, if you feel like New Haven Promise is something that you want to pursue for your child, make all of the community service hours off of the New Haven Promise site. That way you won't have to run into, does it qualify, does it not? It'll work for your high school and for New Haven Promise. There you
It
go.
does. And we try to avoid making students do additional community service hours.
Exactly.
So we're constantly working with nonprofits in the city, and we're also working with the district to ensure that their community service offerings qualify for New Haven's Promise as well, not just a graduation requirement.
Right. That makes sense to me. And then we were speaking about the back to school rally. I just want to let you know again, we've been telling you it's Thursday, August 17th. You got to be there to get everything that you need to know. And again, this is Jorgieliz Casanova, program manager, assistant to the president, New Haven Promise. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about the latest scholarship opportunity in partnership with Yale because it's a big deal and we are so excited about it as a community. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, yes, wonderful. So we have the Pennington Fellowship. I say the Pennington Scholarship sometimes.
Mhm.
And the Pennington is actually, we're administrating the fund for Yale University. We have 8 students who have been selected to receive a scholarship of up to $20,000 from Yale University. And then we have some of the other partner institutions have provided an additional incentive for those students to ease their financials as well. And the Pennington Scholarship is renewable. So these students are going to be
Nice.
receiving the support every year. And we hope to be able to have more students join 2 per year at each of the partner institutions. And then we have some confirmations that we're working on for students. Our goal here at New Haven Promise is to be able to provide the students with support on their campuses as well.
Nice.
And ultimately have a network of Promise HBCU students at these campuses who can then support each other and be able to connect with the resources on the campus. And we can then also provide any resources or supports to ensure their success and ultimately, as part of our wonderful program, get them back to the city.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we'll still be working with all of the students in college, both the Pennington recipients and the New Haven Promise recipients, with paid summer internships as well to ensure that they're getting the career experience that they'll need to launch into their careers.
You guys do so very much. New Haven, the Pennington one, is it the 20,000 each year? You're going to get the same amount?
Yes, so it is 20,000 per year,
Okay.
and this so it's 20,000 per year for 2 students. Every single year are added, so 2 additional students will be added every single school year.
Wow, that's
And then
amazing.
it'll follow them for 4 years. They're at those HBCUs. And we have, of course, you probably heard a couple: Morgan State, Howard, Spelman, Hampton, North Carolina A&T. And our hope is to eventually grow it to 40 to 50 scholarship recipients per year.
You got to show love to Yale for that one. That's a wonderful, wonderful fellowship to offer to our students here. And the goal is, like Georgia said, you go off to school, you get the education that you deserve, that you need, and you bring it right back home and work here in New Haven. And you have to be a New Haven resident for New Haven.
Yes, both
Okay.
for the Pennington and for the New Haven Promise Scholarship, you do have to be a New Haven resident for at least all of 9th through 12th and attending a New Haven eligible school.
Georgiales, give us, oh, actually, before we go, we still have a little bit of time.
Mhm.
Program manager, can you tell us a little bit about the programs that you do manage within the program?
Absolutely. It is funny because I wear a lot of hats here at New Haven Promise. We're actually a very small team of 5. And
Wow.
yes. And so I currently do all of our K through 12 and community engagement and outreach. So anything within the schools that's happening, that's falls under my umbrella. And then community engagements events. So you'll see me there at the back to school rally, and community events that we're invited to as well. And then I also am currently the person overseeing our internship and jobs program. New Haven Promise has a very robust paid summer internship program, and also a year-round internship program, as well as full-time and temporary placement support for our graduates who are finishing or have finished up in college and they're looking for roles. Um,
Nice. With only I'm going to let you continue, but with a staff of 5, how do you guys manage all of this? Because I'm sure there is interaction with students. They have to have questions. They have to be bombarding you with this. How do you manage all of this?
Oh, well, it's been managing pretty well. So yes, I do
Good.
receive a lot of inquiries from students, parents, families. I do receive communication from folks looking to hire interns, those sort of things, and we've been able to manage it just fine. Of course, we can always use support to expand the team.
Mhm.
The scholarship is very much secure, and that's great. The students can count on that, and we would love to continue to offer the supports that we've been offering. I also support our students in college, so we have a wonderful current college student support program. It includes an ambassador program, a peer mentorship
That's good.
component. So it's definitely takes a lot, and it requires folks who are incredibly passionate about it. You gotta want to work.
Yeah, you need an assistant to the assistant. That's what I'm hearing because I want to say contact Georgia Lee. She has all the information, but then I'm thinking it's only 5 of them. That's a lot to deal with.
You can email me or email info@newhavenpromise.org. Generally, just my first name, Jorgieliz at newhavenpromise.org, and I will get a response to you. It is always my goal to make sure that folks are leaving with the information they need. But if you visit newhavenpromise.org
Mhm.
and you follow the link to our new website, which we are revamping our entire website, you will see that there's a section top right side that says student portal. Click
Okay.
the student portal because that is a FAQ of everything promise related, and it has real links. So if you're at the community service FAQ, it'll bring you to the community service section
Nice.
where we're temporarily housing some of the items while our website continues to be built out and revamped to house everything that we now do. New Haven Promise is no longer just a scholarship.
Mhm.
uh, it is a economic development, student support, and career launch organization. And that's exactly what our city needs and needed, and we hope to continue doing this amazing work that will help our city grow.
Absolutely. The internship career fair that you guys do, that's absolutely wonderful. You're doing wonderful things, which is why I wanted to sit and chat with you so we can know what we need to know. And I thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and inform us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will look forward to more information from you and these emails that lets us know about these community service. Because when I get them, I go on the air and I let everybody know about them as well. So we can, it's a collective effort.
Indeed, indeed, and we always welcome any volunteer projects with the alders as well in the city, and nonprofit organizations that need help getting to students. We can absolutely provide that support.
What's the process for those who would like to be included in the volunteering for the nonprofits?
Yep. So you just contact service@newhavenpromise.org, send a message that you're interested in being added as an eligible organization for New Haven Promise, and then you will receive a response back with the very quick 3-step process.
And what they need to do. Awesome. Any final words, Georgia Lise, before we wrap it up?
I just really want to say to parents and students, we absolutely are looking forward to working with you all. We are a resource here at New Haven Promise.
Yes, you
And
are.
if you have a senior, please make sure they are applying before December 23rd, 2023. That is the deadline, regardless of what their plans are. We are not psychic, and we've seen a lot of changes happen. We want to
Absolutely.
make sure that they are there in our system, ready to go should anything change when July of next year comes around.
I love it.
Okay.
Always here to inform you, family. That's what we do. We are your community station. Thank you again, Jorgieliz Casanova over at New Haven Promise. Contact her. She has all the knowledge. I am Wanda Coppage. Keep it locked. You do have more R&B coming in right after the break. And then make sure you join me back on Monday for the midday workforce. As always, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I am Wanda Coppage. Be blessed.